From data to dollars, transforming your e-commerce ad campaigns. Today, I am going to dive into Google Ads specifically. Some of the learnings here are probably applicable for other platforms, but it's going to be very specific to Google Ads because we have real examples that we can use. Let me just get this going. So a little bit about me. I've been working in Google Ads since 2010 was the first time I got a true taste of it. Have been around for several years in the specialist role as well as managing across hundreds of clients, and I've seen the evolution of Google Ads through it. This whole presentation was put together with the whole Nav43 team, and I'll give them some shout outs for sure because I definitely could not go into the detail I did in this presentation without them. They helped me put together all of these numbers, helped me position a lot of our clients' kind of case studies into this. Nav43, a boutique digital marketing agency, we really focus on SEO and paid media. This is a huge faction of our business. We manage millions of ad dollars, and that kind of leads into this. I'm going to go over. When we do an audit and we build out a scalable and profitable plan, we really look at these 7 main components, added an 8th one if you can count on the left side. But we look at everything from revenue and profitability of that business to conversion tracking to audience segmentation, understanding the whole life cycle, user reviews, creative. There's all sorts of things we're going to take into consideration. However, in today's, I'm going to focus on these two in specifically. Conversion tracking and revenue and profitability, because they really do make the foundation of any successful account. If you want to take your ad platform from spending $5,000, $10,000 a month to grow to $100,000 a month, $1 million a month, really you need to make sure your revenue is solid. You can trust the numbers to make the decisions as a brand and as an agency to grow your campaign. When I look at different business challenges, like how do I scale my business profitably? That's really, at the end of the day, our conversations and our discovery starts like that. How can we use Google Ads and how can we use these ad platforms to scale our business? How can we make better decisions from our paid media accounts? There's a lot of learnings that you can take from your ad revenue directly into your overall business decisions. You get like immediate data with digital advertising. You can make decisions on these quickly. You can tell what audiences are working, what creative's not working faster than any sort of test you can do on your site. I mean, you can have lots of traffic, but that's a whole other thing. I also face a lot of questions on like, why are there discrepancies from our Google Ads? There's been a lot of attribution changes in Google Ads. And then are we actually using our campaign, our account to its fullest potential? The answer is probably no. I mean, there's so much work you can be doing. If you're just one person managing it yourself, there's a lot of work to be done from an agency support perspective. Or if you've been working with a generalist marketing agency or doing it in-house, there's usually just some shared learnings from spending so much money on different kinds of accounts that can be applied to an account. So there's usually lots of things you can tap into. I'm going to be actually sharing these slides afterwards. We're going to have them on the Nav43 site as like a downloadable. So you don't have to worry about reading every single line on the presentation. These are just really good support points. Like how can I scale my ROAS or my cost per lead? Or these are all different questions I get and I'm going to address in this presentation. In this webinar, we're focusing in on measurement. That's growth starts with accurate measurement. Not the flashiest of topics, but something that is essential and we always take into consideration when we first bring on a new client or a new campaign. And that is really making sure that your conversion data is accurate because you cannot optimize and scale an account until it is. All right, so I'm gonna take a little step back here. To understand what's happening in the ad platforms, I know this is a really busy slide. There's lots here. The evolution of Google, it's actually quite a fascinating topic when you look at this and see it year by year since their launch in 2000. This whole left side here from 2000 to 2014, those are the early days. I mean, I only started in 2010, so anything from 2000 to 2008 was even before my time in the platform. But we're really going to zone in on 2015 forward. And really, I would even say 2018 forward, when they started really integrating a lot more machine learning, a lot more AI into their accounts. They had lots of different changes, and I'm going to highlight a few of them that are important for this conversation so you understand why I'm going into these topics. So kind of zoning in on that 2015 to 2023, we start seeing changes in ads. Google starts doing things like adding expanded text ads. They start doing things like adding additional layers of optimization into your accounts. In 2018, the whole "Don't be evil" thing, which I don't know if you know about this, but it's a really interesting motto that Google really stood behind right before they integrated machine learning across their ad campaigns and ad accounts and their platform in general. There's a whole backstory to the "Don't be evil." I advise you to go Google it, check it out. But at the end of the day, this is where Google really put their foot in the sand and said, we're going to really double down on machine learning and automation. In 2019, they started taking away a lot of your control for your ad copy, doing responsive search ads. 2020, they start integrating things with Zapier to do CRM integrations. In 2021, they start taking away control of your modifiers, of your keyword match types. They, step by step, keep taking away advertisers' abilities to make really specific changes in management and introducing new ways to integrate automation, machine learning, and of course, that all leads up to performance max campaigns. And today, with AI-powered creativity tools and account-wide automation, this is important. Let's just look at Google's revenue from 2001 to 2022. In 2020 to 2021, we can see it went from 146 billion to 209 billion. Of course, there's pandemic factors involved in this, but at the end of the day, it lines up with them launching things like AI enhanced ad formats and discovery ads, performance max campaigns. And they had only recently launched machine learning and automation to kind of lead into this. So at the end of the day, they were testing your ad dollars, client and brands alike, ad dollars to help their machine learning algorithms learn to do better. So, and they made a lot of money off of it. Wasted spend, not their problem. They're just trying to get you a return on ad spend. At the end of the day, they wasted a lot of money leading up to the last couple of years where it really has become a much stronger system. Like, it's showing that you will have a hard time kind of beating Google Ads automations these days with manual things. So not something you really want to focus too much on. So AI itself, of course, I was going to show a video here, but tech problems is a little hard to set up. So I'm just going to speak to it right now, kind of on the, when you give AI a task and you tell it exactly what to do, it follows those instructions. That's kind of where we are today. And it can follow them really well when you have machine learning integrated and it's trying to take all your different data points and produce a better output. It's taking the data points at face value that they are accurate, and it's going to go in a straight line with that in mind. So why is that important? Well, ad platforms spent billions of dollars perfecting this algorithm over the past few years to make advertising more effective, and it has become more effective. Don't kid yourself there. AI systems work extremely well doing exactly what you tell them to do, but not anything beyond that yet. Intelligent systems will not correct themselves, not without human inputs. So why is this relevant to this conversation? Well, Google increased its ad revenue by convincing advertisers to spend more money on their platform. And if brands can make a profit, bonus to Google. And many brands made a lot of profits. So there is a huge value in Google Ads. I can definitely stress that. But it's on the brands to ensure that their data is accurate. It's not on Google. They're not going to take responsibility for you making sure that your Google Ads conversions being imported from your analytics and your own systems is accurate. So make your ad dollars work harder and make sure that data is accurate is really the theme of this. Kind of set up what's kind of happened in the platforms of Google to really set up this conversation. Let's see some examples. I'm going to break down some real life examples that we've gone through to give you an idea of things you might be able to see in your account and hopefully aren't happening there. If you're a client of ours and you've tuned in, it's definitely not. So first one, double counted conversions and revenue values. So if you're making $1, Google thinks you're making $2. Seems easy to catch, but it can be tricky sometimes. So let's look at this example here. I'm just going to kind of reference this table. So we can see here inside this account at the bottom here on the left, $2,496,000 approximately in conversion value. Now, that is an impressive 14.22 ROAS. Hey, I would take that any day. When we first saw this, we're like, okay, let's see how we can improve this. But at the end of the day, like, they're doing really well. However, let's take a deeper look. When you segment by conversion action, so not a lot of marketers who don't get into depth into the Google Ads platform, and trust me, I don't blame you, can really go into this detail and look at understanding, there's obvious things like, hey, how much conversion value, how many sales are there versus what's the breakdown of conversion actions. So that's something I need to kind of highlight here. So looking at the conversion action table, which is available in the tools there, it's all in platform. So you just have to know what to look for. And when we look at this, we dig a little deeper and we can see that purchases and GA4 and all this kind of stuff, it's tracking from multiple sources, UA360 and GA4. Okay, so we start seeing multiple sources. That's an immediate flag. Now, these values start overinflating that total revenue. We kind of zone this back in, and we can see that there's an additional $1.44 million of ghost revenue being attributed to this account. So Google is thinking that an additional 1.4 million is being generated by their ads, and they're building their systems around this money. So if we fix this, we can. It's obviously it doesn't paint the nicest picture, but it reports on a modest 5.3 times return on ad spend. Still a good starting point, but the most important part of this is real conversion value. When we know it's real, we can improve it. So in this case, it's really striving for that 10-to-1 ROAS. In this case here, it obviously centered in from 14 to 5, but now it's real numbers, and we can really make sure we optimize on it. So, scenario one, double reporting revenue. You can see that by checking on your conversion actions, seeing sources, and attributing them to one single source of truth. It's usually best to have GA4 as your one source of truth. And our other options, there's paid options. And as long as you have one single option, it's important. But GA4 is typically the way to go. Assigning a value of, like, say, for example, a newsletter subscription, saying it's $35 for someone to sign up for your newsletter, which is a pretty high value, but if you have a high ticket product, you might be able to associate that. However, does this number come from a real value, or is it an estimate? For example, I do know brand owners who have it down to a science. Like, they know 1 in every 10 of their newsletter subscribers goes through a drip campaign, and 10% of those are going to convert and make a sale. And of that sale, there's a $100 average order value, so they're going to put a $10 newsletter subscriber value. They know that they're willing to spend a 5-to-1 return on ad spend, $2, you get me an email sub. I know I can make this profitable. But is it built from numbers like that, or is it built on an estimation? And it's built on an estimation. It's definitely a little bit more vague, and we definitely advise going a little bit lower on the value side. So let's look at an example. I'm just taking an ad group here. So we can see some interesting numbers here. There's 3,691 conversions. It costs $2,369 to get that. Incredible 64-cent cost per conversion. That's insane, right? You're seeing some strong click-through rates and some strong cost per clicks. These are all great. The ROAS looks like a 45-to-1. Almost a little bit too good to be true, and that's because it is. So it's showing a conversion value of $106,000 associated to this ad group, which would be great if it was real. Let's actually go into this and see where this came from. So they have it set up here, use the value and currency from GA4. If there's no value, use $1. But they have the value set up in GA4 as a $35 value. Like, if you sign up for our newsletter, it's worth $35 for us, which in theory is great. But if you start giving that proxy revenue to feed into the account and count every conversion, they also had a 90-day click-through window. No one's going to attribute a ad click and then 89 days later they come and sign up for your newsletter. That's not the kind of attribution you want to be having. So 90-day window, counting multiple conversions and associating revenue to it, you're not giving Google the right data. So at first glance, you're thinking, okay, not the end of the world. But let's see what machine learning does with this false data. It's going to do exactly what you tell it to do. In this scenario, we can see things like a 3.22 repeat rate. For everyone who subscribes, they subscribe 3 times on average, 3.2 times. So of those conversions, it's being tripled. From there, we can also see, there we go. Sorry, I'm ahead of the slide here. For the conversion value, it has real revenue associated to it. Like we said, Google's machine learning, they're very smart. They've learned on billions of dollars over the past few years, and they've invested money in the best engineers in the world. Once max settings, so it's just going to go out there and maximize performance. It is going to find every which way possible with the data given to get you a newsletter sign up because it thinks it's printing money for your brand. You dig a little deeper, you go into your conversion action scanner, you segment by the countries of where people are submitting, and you can see that, such a high percentage of these, the repeat rates, so that 3-to-1 repeat rate, super important, means it's probably a click farm, probably some sort of bot, and it's in countries where this specific client doesn't even ship to. So, that revenue is clearly not being used correctly. How to change this? Easy. Change the value to 1, change count to 1 conversion, and then change your click-through window to 1 day. If you click an ad, you're going to associate and attribute that conversion to a newsletter sign up to your Google ad if it happens on that day. This at least paints a better picture. And there are other ways to set this up for sure. This is a really strong way to start off with. Build from there. A little summary of that. Scenario 2 is proxying revenue to other kinds of conversions and incorrectly setting them up inside your Google Ads conversion actions. Assigning revenue to something and then saying and letting AI and machine learning just go to town on that conversion. Scenario 3, underreporting like lead value to ad platforms. We work with some clients who have a very complicated sales process. I've worked with enterprise sales where it takes 14 to 18 months to close a sale. We've worked with high ticket items that might cost anywhere from $25,000 to $50,000 for a sale. And it's not quite as simple as selling a widget where, they spend $50, they click the ad, they buy it on an impulse. There's much more lag time. There's a longer sales window, and there's a lot more things that happen in between sales teams and to actually get to that sale. This kind of goes into that. Here's a scenario breakdown of one of our clients where over the last year, we really worked with them on making sure we could have dynamically tracked values imported from their CRM, in this case, Salesforce, and map those milestones into your Google Ads accounts with value. Not only give them, someone's buying something worth $30,000, that very seldom happens off of just a Google click and then a buy. So if you're just relying on that data to optimize your account, you're really going to have trouble spending money. You're not going to be able to attribute any sales to it, and you're likely going to have an unsuccessful campaign. You need to find ways to show quality leads going through milestones and mapping that value into Google Ads. We know that machine learning, which works on real data and will do exactly what you tell it to do, the numbers you give it, very well. So let's give it those right numbers. We did a kind of a 4-step approach: planning, implementation, testing, and then tuning. In that evolution of Google, things have changed from in the past. Let's even say back in 2010 to 2015, before a lot of this automation, you would have a better time iterating and automating on the go. Launch a campaign, move that keyword over to this ad group, a lot of peel and stick, a lot of bid modifier changes, a lot of rigging the data, and then making manual changes. Nowadays, it's changed with this machine learning to be a much more proactive planning, and then letting the machine learning do its job and tweaking as you start seeing real data come in. So in this case, just fast forward here, once we had that plan built out in Salesforce, we had those numbers ready to go into the system, that's when we were ready to scale. And I have a feeling that if we had tried doing that way too early, we would have had poor results, but we did it properly when we tuned it before we let it go, before we spent that money, and it really gave us the kind of results you need. So huge growth in terms of lead volumes with only, for example, in this case, I think it was a 43% spend, but with all this value, you can see huge return, but it required that upfront work to really get that value input into Google Ads. So if you have a complicated sales system and you're not doing something like this, or you're not feeding those data points into the automation, into Performance Max, into any kind of campaigns you're running, then you're doing a disservice to your ad platform. Huge ROAS numbers increases, right? So there's lots of other examples. For example, if you're looking at a SaaS product, maybe in this scenario, we've had some clients who have a monthly amount. Let's say it's a $150 subscription value, and their average client lasts 18 months, and they have a 80% retention or 90% retention. Let's say 90% retention. At that point, you can start giving a customer lifetime value to it. Now, if you're optimizing on the ROAS of a one-time upfront sale for their first month, you are doing a disservice. You need to make sure you have that kind of customer acquisition cost in mind. And how do you optimize towards that? It's easy to think about in theory, but how do you get it into the platform to make the right decisions? That's where you need to make sure the data is accurate and there's conversion value input on that customer lifetime value. And then more on accuracy, if your GM, GTM, or Google Tag Manager and your GA4 aren't set up correctly and aren't firing, and there's a large chance that you're not getting full data into it, then obviously if there's no revenue coming through because it's not reporting correctly, not tracking correctly, Google's going to have a hard time optimizing. So there's some other examples like looking at leveraging your entire journey online. That third one kind of fits more into my next topic in next week's webinar. But there are many more data problems we've come across. This doesn't even go into if the data is accurate and we find things within our like deeper dive audit. This is just making sure that the data is accurate, right? So if you have any of these problems, like what can you do about it? Well, to be honest, if you said live with it, I probably can't help you. If you chose fix it, we do have a process. I'm actually going to share this for free. I think we're launching it next week, if I'm not mistaken. We built this out, some great content. So reach out to me, ben@nav43.com. I will make sure we get that content over to you. And if you have any problems going through it, you can always reach out to me as well. Also, in part 2 of this webinar, I'm going to be focusing in on, okay, your data is accurate. Now, what are we doing with it? How are we finding the right audiences? How are we ensuring the right conversions are happening? Kind of deep diving into the next step of our account audit that we go through. There's a reason why there's like a 30, 60, 90 approach to most Google Ad campaign scalable projects we take on, because there's really a right way of doing it. It's making sure data, and then it's focusing on the right audiences and seeing how that data is performing before going into scale mode. So in webinar 2, I will go into those audience list mappings, what we're doing inside the platform to make sure you're getting the best return on your investment from the accurate data we have. Thank you for tuning in. I think timing was great. I said I'd do this in under 30 minutes. I got 26. If there's any questions, I can take them. But if not, and if this is all pretty clear, I can also just wrap this up. So I'll kind of go to the audience here and just check out to see if there's anything. Hey, David, let's go. Love that. What do you, I got one question. So I'll just take this one, and then any future questions I can address on the follow-up, just email me really. What do you think about the future? And that is a great question. So, I just went over data accuracy, super important, because what's really happening with this future is Google and Meta and all these different ad platforms are taking away your ability to make advertising decisions on third-party data sets. They're restricting them, a lot of them. So first-party data and your analytics and your data that you've created, your email list, your subscribers, your community, your web traffic, everything that you have is going to become more valuable. So kind of to tie that back to this webinar, if your own data is getting more valuable, you want to make sure you have it mapped to a revenue tracking system that you can optimize on. So I can kind of hit the cookieless future in a future topic, but that kind of ties it back into what we're talking about today. Okay, perfect. I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. This is great. I know I went through this pretty quickly, so if any questions at all, just follow up in an email. I'm going to tune out. Cheers. How do I stop recording? Let's go.